for their 5-minute game of chess. Hikaru back with the white pieces. Gukesh looking to get a point on the board for Team India.
Start white's clock.
Signal has been given, the handshake is extended, and there you can see the time ticks down.
No way.
What? The
For the
F4?
The bird's opening is going to be played by every single American in the next 2 years.
Well, that's good for India in future versions of this event because it's typically not seen at these high levels for a reason. But I will say that, everyone would have thought that it was Hikaru giving preparation advice to Levy. No, the other way around. Gotham tells Hikaru what to play on move 1.
Now, I'd put money on the fact that Levy was the one who convinced him to go for it.
And C5, I like that Gukesh is immediately undermining that pawn structure. He's putting pressure on that D4 pawn. And after D takes C5, I have a feeling that the black queen might jump into A5.
I mean, from my untrained eye, I love all the positions of white pieces generally, right? Again, I've got most of my minor pieces, barring that dark squared bishop, out on the board. I've got multiple pawns controlling central squares, so feels like a very stable position in which I've worked towards the principles of chess as I know it. And now, as Harjit mentioned, it's about Gukesh trying to find ways to undermine that principality that I've played.
Right, because White's whole setup was geared to stopping Black with pawn to E5, and it's still not really available. But Black decided to strike with the other pawn. And this bishop now, instead of staring into a pawn, it stares through its own knight into enemy territory. And I like Gukesh's play. Quickly develops that bishop. He can later try to strike in the center, but this pawn on F4, that's the problem, Dash, is that you often want to push it backwards to cover key squares that are currently vulnerable.
And look at the Indian team. They're happy with Gukesh's position. They're happy with his time advantage. They're happy with the technical advantage that he has because the bishop on C1. The bishop on C1 is a bad piece right now. And we know that in chess, activity is very important. Black surely slightly happy with the position.
Hikaru definitely wondering why he listened to Levy.
Yeah, we need to get a shot of him darting back with glaring eyes towards Levy. What did you make me do?
I mean, just a worse position for White. Even this last with King H1, right? You're throwing your king in the corner. Don't have an attack. B3 play. I mean, that is just a risky move because after knight takes knight, if the queen takes, there's a bishop staring through the diagonal. That's usually bad news for a queen. So after knight takes, maybe white take with the pawn. You give yourself an isolated queen pawn, IQP. That's not good news at all.
Let's go.
There it is.
This is the best position that any of the Indian players have had from the opening.
Okay. So is that pawn our target? Is the game all about D4 right now?
Yeah, that's a huge weakness. And Black's pieces are already ready to stare at it. I know there are some others in the way, but that's what, the legends of the game from the past, Capablancas, the Nimzoviches, learn your chess history, everybody. Some great names there. You want to blockade the square in front of the isolated pawn so the pawn can't push very easily. And here, tactically, it cannot push because after knight takes, there are problems down the diagonal here. So that's why Hikaru decides to push in the other way. He's trying to go for an attack. But Harshit, I'm not really believing in it.
I don't really believe it. I want to put pressure on the D4 pawn. Now it looks very weak. Usually, the white bishop wants to go to B2, but now that the F pawn has moved, it kind of just feels like the dark squares are very weak in white's position right now. Gukesh has a time advantage, but he still needs to understand which pieces to exchange. We always talk about like what pieces are important and what pieces we want to trade. I think right now it would be nice to trade those knights off. Why not just take those knights off the board, play knight to E4, challenging that knight on C3.
Great move. I think it's a really smart play there that you're suggesting because Black doesn't want to fall victim to an attack. It does look a bit worrisome, opening up the F file, but there's that rook, the castled rook, sitting and protecting the king. So if the knights come off the board, if this knight is not here, the bishop can then trade, and the black king will feel very safe where it stands.
But here we have the clocks equalizing in this moment. Again, Gukesh probably recognizing that he is in an advantage position.
Dash, am I seeing these heart rates correctly?
I mean, I'm going to believe the tech here.
Hikaru's heart rate is very high.
And he's got the red heart, which tells us that his stress levels are high. It's not just about the heart rate itself. It's also about the stress and anxiety that you're feeling.
Goes for knight D5. He captures with the bishop. And I think I like this idea by Hikaru not giving up that knight on C3. It does feel like black should be slightly better though. He goes back bishop to 6, the pawn on d4 is hanging now.
These top players, they love that bishop pair, and as Harshit just said at the end, that pawn on d4 is hanging. You'd love to push it, but not so fast. There's a knight loose behind that pawn. So I actually don't really see an easy way to defend the pawn. The good news for Hikaru is that if this queen ever leaves its starting square, the e7 pawn drops in return. So it's kind of like a fancy trade, but I think that Hikaru needs to prepare for that series of events, maybe by defending his knight first, which will be loose if d4 drops.
The bishop on g7 is not a bishop, it's a rocket. I mean, look at the way it's eyeing on that pawn on d4, that knight on c3, and also in the end, the rook on a1. All of them are under attack by that bishop on g7.
Can I evacuate the knight? Okay, well, Hikaru's going to make a decision. He's going to retreat the bishop to defend that pawn. I was thinking maybe a backwards knight move, effectively defending the pawn at the same time and moving that knight out of the long scope of the bishop in its eventuality. He goes a different way. I'm willing to say a better way without even looking at the engine.
You know, you say a better way, but I do think that Hikaru's been in trouble. But that last move by Gukesh, a teeny bit careless. A nice shot from Hikaru, giving up a pawn, sure. Bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop, then that pawn can be captured. But now there are tactical possibilities. I actually think this was a great shot from Hikaru. The only real chance of queen d7 is slip from Gukesh.
He's so alert. You give him one chance and he bounces on that opportunity.
Red border. Red border.
Yes, he takes. Best move, of course. Hikaru Nakamura is completely back in the game.
He is, but he still has the difficulty of this d5 pawn, and Gukesh has some easy moves to make, like rook a to d8 right now, put pressure on the pawn, but Hikaru's going to bring his own rook up to c5 to aggressively defend that weak point.
Gukesh trying to think if he wants to bring the rook on a8 in the game or the f rook in the game. He goes for rook a d8. Very logical. Rook to c5. Protecting the pawn on d5 and hitting the queen on b5 seems like a good move for white right now. Everyone in the audience very keenly analyzing the position. Very curious who's going to win the final match here.
Yeah, still many of our fans making their voices heard, but I also can feel that others are... There's a feeling of intensity that's starting to fall. A blanket of intensity over the audience as they're realizing the complications of this position and how it really is still any man's game.
Look at that move. Bishop tucked away where the king usually resides after your castle. But I think he's just trying to make sure that he has no LPDO, loose pieces drop off. So he's keeping his bishop on a safe and protected square. It also covers the back rank so there are no checks. Even if this queen were to leave, rook f1 would maybe be threatening, but not a check, so it wouldn't be a forcing sequence. I actually really like this move from Hikaru. It's a great pragmatic decision.
On the contrary, the pawn on d5 is loose, and I do think that the only player who can play for a win right now should be black.
Definitely agree with that. I mean, Gukesh is better. Rook c2. There's a bit of hesitation there from Hikaru, but he wants to defend this weak point, and he has successfully done just that. I think that Gukesh is going for the attack and the defense simultaneously. He wants to blockade that isolated pawn, but Hikaru is going to play around it. Queen c6 becomes kind of a threat. You want to create a pass pawn. If the queens get exchanged, that's very worrisome for black.
Goes queen to c4. I like this idea of placing the bishop on d6 so that the pawn on d5 is a permanent weakness there.
Rerouting of the queen here, nicely centralized. Now the rook will come over as well. I mean, all of the pieces for black are involved in the game. There is that bishop now tucked away, but of course now the rooks come off, and we're working with a queen and a bishop apiece. We've got 5 pawns apiece as well.
And Gukesh is offering a queen trade. He believes that if the queens get traded, the pawn on d5 is going to be a weakness which the king might just come and take.
He believes it. Do you believe it?
I believe it, and that's why. But Hikaru Nakamura is like, no, I think it's a draw. And the computers agree with him.
Hikaru found the only move there. We saw the red box appear, and he's doing the right thing. But look at the clock, Dash. They are both around 30 seconds.
They're in lockstep with each other right now. Flagging is always an option. They do have 1 second increment at this point in the game when they're underneath 1 minute. And both of these guys are well practiced in time scrambles.
I think Hikaru knows that this is equal. Gukesh thinks that he has practical chances. If this game ends in a draw, we go to shootout, which is 1 minute each.
The chess
that would be fun. A huge mistake. The bar.
Whoa.
It goes down all the way in black's favor.
Whoa. Bishop d6 is coming. Gukesh is winning.
Yes, he is. The bishop for white is in no man's land. Bishop d6 becomes the idea, trying to trade it off, and then the black king can step over. This is an attack on the spot. I think you just defend it, and I don't think that white can stop the king from going over.
Yeah, definitely something you guys will have to revisit in the analyst segment in terms of where that critical moment occurred and how it flipped in
And bishop
Gukesh's
back
favor.
to d4.
Oh, but he made a mistake. Gukesh has returned the favor to some extent because now it's back objectively to equal territory.
This is the difficulty of the moment. Again, we've got the benefit of the engine. It feels easy to us, but they are working with 15 to 20 seconds apiece. They've got 1,000+ person audience making noise around them. This is a brand new environment for these players, even with how experienced they are in the professional chess world.
And Gukesh is shaking his head there because now after a4, the pawn on a5 is on on a dark square, which means that the white bishop can attack it now. Bishop b6 attacking that pawn, as I was just saying.
Yeah, this was a decision you don't really enjoy from Gukesh's perspective. But both players, they are really low on the clock, and there could be a mistake here from either side. You have to be very careful not to drop a pawn or allow a trade that liquidates into a problematic endgame.
7 seconds for Hikaru. He has to make sure he doesn't lose on the clock.
Oh,
Whoa, we are not going to race.
Right, more pawns come off the board. Still equal material at this point, but there are no pawns sharing a file with their
Hikaru's
counterpoints
clock.
at this point. Hikaru's clock is very low. It's Gukesh who's moving with great speed and precision.
Oh, he takes the pawn. Oh, and all the pieces have been traded. Bear kings on the board. It's a draw.
They know, and it's a draw. There's not enough material to deliver a checkmate. The draw's been called. We're going to our first shootout.
Oh. What a finale that we have here, guys.
For real, for real. From 10 minutes to 5 to 1. The pieces will be reset. The players will have a moment to speak again with their teams. Now, once again, a reminder, E4 off the board. D4, right?